My name is Lydia. I'm 36 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. And this is the story of how the man I once trusted with my life tried to erase it piece by piece, until I caught him. It started with the kind of tiredness that doesn't go away after a nap. This wasn't the kind of fatigue you feel after working too hard or forgetting to eat. This was different, deeper, like someone was unplugging the very current inside me. Each day I woke up more disconnected than the last. My thoughts moved like they were wading through water. I'd forget conversations minutes after having them. One day, I left my car running outside my office and didn't even realize it until a coworker mentioned it 3 hours later. That was when I knew something wasn't just wrong, it was terrifying. I used to be sharp, alert, proud of how fast I could pick up numbers in my job as a financial analyst. I managed high-stress accounts with calm precision. My clients trusted me. I trusted myself. But lately, it felt like I was dissolving. I dropped appointments. I forgot birthdays. And the dreams, those awful, suffocating dreams, where I was trapped in a room with no exit and someone whispering behind a door I couldn't see. It all started 3 months ago. Right around the time my husband Brandon began preparing me tea every night. "You need real sleep, LYD, he said one evening, handing me a steaming mug. "You're going to burn out." He said it with such kindness, his hand lightly brushing my cheek, his eyes soft. At the time, I was grateful. After all, wasn't this what love looked like? Small, thoughtful gestures? Except every night, 10 minutes after drinking it, I'd crash. Not sleep. Crash. Like a trapdoor opened beneath my consciousness and I tumbled down, powerless. I started waking with sore limbs, a pounding head, and that disturbing dry mouth sensation like I'd taken cold medicine or had been sedated. I didn't want to believe it had anything to do with Brandon. I made excuses. Maybe it was hormones. Stress. Maybe I was just working too much. But the suspicion wouldn't leave. Every time I lifted that cup to my lips, I hesitated. What was really in this special herbal blend he claimed came from a shop near his office? One night, I caught a sharp, almost metallic scent under the usual mint. My stomach clenched. I looked at Brandon's face. He smiled, but his eyes weren't smiling. "What's in this one?" I asked lightly, pretending curiosity. "Chamomile, lemon balm, maybe a pinch of valerian root." "Same as always." I nodded. Sipped. And watched him. That night, I didn't finish the tea. I waited until he turned away and poured it down the kitchen sink. Then I pretended to sleep. And for the first time in weeks, I had no nightmares. I woke up foggy, yes, but not broken. It was enough to light the match of fear inside me. So I made a decision. I called Monica. We hadn't spoken much lately, life gets in the way, but she was my best friend from college, and more importantly, a licensed pharmacist. If anyone could help, she could. I used the landline from work, just in case. "You free tonight?" I asked. "I need to talk." "It's urgent." Her tone shifted instantly. 8 o'clock. My place. And bring whatever you've been drinking. When I stepped into Monica's apartment that night, I felt like I was walking into a different world. Clean, stable, safe. The scent of eucalyptus from her diffuser made me exhale for the first time in days. I told her everything. I didn't mean to cry, but as I spoke, the tears came uncontrollably. I described the fatigue, the blackouts, the dreams. The bruises on my arms I couldn't explain. The terrifying suspicion that I was being drugged. Monica's face went pale. "Lydia, that sounds like a sedative," she said quietly. "There are compounds that dissolve completely in hot water. No color. No taste. Some aren't even detectable by basic tests." I stared at her. "You mean Brandon's drugging me?" "I can't say for sure without testing." But from what you've described, it's possible. And if he is, Lydia, you're not just being drugged. You're being controlled. Watched. Maybe worse. The room spun. I gripped the edge of her kitchen table just to stay grounded. She opened a drawer and handed me a basic home testing kit. Don't stop pretending. Pour the tea out when he's not looking. Save samples. Watch him. Listen. And if you see anything else, record it. I nodded. That night, I didn't go home until late. When I walked into the apartment, Brandon was on the couch, reading. Hey, you're home late, he said, rising. Long day? I nodded. Just tired. He smiled and walked into the kitchen. I made your tea. Of course he had. I took it, smiled, and waited until he wasn't looking. Then I poured half into the soil of a dying orchid by the window. It soaked in like poison. I forced myself to act natural. Back on the couch, I lifted the cup to my lips. He looked at me. Smells different tonight? I asked. Brandon blinked. Just once. A little too long. Oh, added honey ginger, he replied smoothly. Helps the nerves. I smiled. Perfect. But I didn't sleep. I waited. And what happened next would change everything? That night, I lay in bed pretending to sleep. My breathing slow, my body still, back facing the door. Every nerve was alive. I could hear everything. The faint click of the hallway light. The creak of Brandon's footsteps as he moved around the apartment. A faint rattle of glass, maybe ice cubes in a drink. Then silence. 4 minutes. Then, the office door opened. That sound was unmistakable. Brandon wasn't heading to the kitchen or the bathroom. He was heading into the one room I kept private, my office, my sanctuary. And he never went in there unless I asked him to print something or get a file. He knew I kept my personal finances on that laptop, all my saved emails, passwords, banking info. It was my entire life on that device. I sat up slowly, heart pounding like a war drum. My feet hit the carpet silently. Step by step, I crept down the hallway. The door to the office was cracked open just a sliver. Enough. Brandon sat at my desk, lit only by the cold glow of the laptop screen. My laptop. He didn't see me. He was too focused. His back was turned, his face just slightly in profile. I recognized the USB drive he pulled from his jacket, black, matte, unmarked. He plugged it into the side port. My breath caught in my throat. Click. He was opening folders. Personal ones. I watched him go through my financial statements, client reports, saved scans of my passport and driver's license. One by one, he dragged them into the drive. My entire identity was being copied in real time. He opened a browser. My online bank. He tried to log in. Incorrect password. He searched my archived emails. Found a reset link. That's when I knew, this wasn't curiosity or a moment of weakness. This was a plan. Calculated. Cold. Probably weeks, if not months, in the making. Then he did something that made my knees buckle. He opened a PDF. A loan application. Under my name. It said I was requesting $75,000. Purpose, real estate investment in Austin, Texas. The collateral, our current apartment. The same apartment legally registered under only my name. The tears welled up without warning. I had to clamp a hand over my mouth to stop myself from making a sound. I backed away slowly, heart pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. Back in bed, I lay frozen, blanketed in betrayal. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. Brandon had been drugging me and trying to steal my identity. My money. My property. My future. And for what? To disappear. To erase me. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone. Probably at a showing, or maybe a coffee meeting with the woman he thought I'd never find out about. But I was done playing wife. I gathered every document I could find, bank statements, ID copies, anything that proved ownership or evidence, and left the apartment without a word. Monica opened her door with a look of alarm. Lydia? I need help, I whispered, nearly collapsing in her arms. Within the hour, she had me seated at her table with real tea, and a plan. She dialed someone named Elliot Sanders, an attorney she'd once worked with. Said he owed her a favor. We were in his office by noon. It was on the 8th floor of a glass building overlooking downtown. Minimalist, sharp, clinical. The kind of place where serious people do serious things. Elliot was in his late 40s, salt and pepper hair, crisp suit, direct tone. Ms. Walker, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Let's get right to it. Monica gave me the basics. Do you have your documents with you? I handed over everything. And with each document he examined, each note I gave, I saw his expression harden. We'll begin by freezing all your accounts, checking, savings, credit cards. Then we'll notify the major credit bureaus and file an identity theft alert. That will put a hold on any loans or credit inquiries made under your name for 90 days. We'll also log an official report with the Portland Police Department. You said he used a USB drive? I nodded. Black, no brand name. He labeled the file folder Tax Backup 2022, but it was all my personal info. Smart, Elliot muttered. Too smart. That'll work against him. I wrote a sworn affidavit right there in the office, detailing everything I saw, heard, and experienced. I included descriptions of the tea, my physical symptoms, the nightmares, and most importantly, the night I watched him steal my data. Elliot looked me in the eye. This isn't just financial abuse, Lydia. It borders on attempted identity erasure. And if he's been drugging you to pull it off, we're talking felony charges, intent to commit fraud, identity theft, chemical coercion, possibly more. The words barely registered. I was still processing what it meant to be betrayed by the man who used to kiss my forehead and say he loved me. That evening, I moved into Monica's spare room. I didn't go back for clothes or anything sentimental. I had no use for the memory of that apartment. I spent the night sitting in silence while Monica made stir-fry. Every sound outside the window made me jump. But every second I was away from him, my head felt a little clearer. The fog was beginning to lift. At 10:17 p.m., my phone rang. Brandon. Of course. Lydia, he asked, his voice frayed. Where are you? I've been trying to call you all day. You just left. No note, no explanation. What's going on? I paused. Let the silence hang. I know, Brandon. There was a pause. Then, what are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said. The laptop. The loan application. The stolen files. The tea. You didn't even try to hide it well. The tea, Brandon? Really? He stammered. LYD, that's insane. You're just under stress. You need rest. No, what I needed was honesty. What I got was sedation, gaslighting, and a criminal trying to vanish with my life savings. He didn't speak. I could hear his shallow breathing on the other end. I've frozen every account, I continued. Filed a report with the police. Hired an attorney. If you try to access anything under my name, you'll be caught. This is your only warning. Please, he whispered. We can fix this. There's no we anymore. And I hung up. I sat on Monica's couch afterward, phone still in hand, staring at the wall. I wasn't just escaping anymore. I was preparing for something far greater. Retribution. Brandon thought I'd been blind. But now I saw everything. And I was about to make sure the world saw it too. By the next morning, everything inside me had changed. No more hesitation. No more excuses. No more trying to understand why a man I once loved could orchestrate something so vile. I didn't need reasons anymore. I needed justice. At 9 a.m. sharp, I returned to Elliot's office with Monica by my side. The sky over Portland was gray and heavy with drizzle, but I walked with the kind of focus I hadn't felt in months. Elliot met us at the door, holding a thick black leather folder under his arm. "I have something," he said simply. "And you need to brace yourself." I swallowed hard and nodded. We stepped into the conference room. He closed the door behind us and opened his laptop. The screen showed a chain of emails, all with blunt, almost clinical subject lines. Identity finalization. Wipe strategy plan. Scottsdale property. After she's gone. Each one was between Brandon and a woman named Vanessa Cruz. Her email handle, sarah.v@blueriseholdings.com. I blinked. "Who is she?" "A former colleague of Brandon's," Elliot said, his voice low. "From his old real estate firm in Houston. They've been corresponding for over 6 months. At first, it was financial documents, property notes. But then it turned intimate. And eventually, conspiratorial." He clicked open one email. Vanessa had written, "I can't wait to finally be out of this mess. When is she signing the refinance paperwork? I need to know when we can start packing. I've already talked to the leasing agent in Scottsdale." Another email. "Last night she was out cold again. That tea works like a charm. Just a few more weeks, babe. Then we're gone. Everything in her name, wiped clean." I couldn't breathe. My name, my life, reduced to a line in someone else's escape plan. Elliot scrolled further and showed me attachments, a scanned purchase agreement for a luxury apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona. Buyer, Vanessa Cruz. Financial sponsor, Brandon Stone. Estimated move-in date, 3 weeks from now. My name appeared again, on documents I had never seen, never signed. "Bank account consolidation," Elliot explained. He forged authorization documents, using scans of your ID and electronic signature. He planned to merge his empty account with yours, drain it, and then file a change of address to Arizona, so you'd never find him again until it was too late. I sat motionless. They were going to vanish. "Yes," Elliot replied. "After gutting your life like it was a business transaction. You weren't just a wife to Brandon. You were the final asset in a sinking portfolio." I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair, trying not to scream. Every dinner, every goodnight kiss, every morning hug had been part of a cover. Brandon was not the man I married. He was a well-dressed predator who thought he'd chosen the perfect target. He hadn't. Because now, I had proof. And I had people who believed me. Monica reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're going to bury him." Elliot nodded. "We have everything we need to file a criminal complaint and civil lawsuit. And Lydia, this isn't just about recovering your assets. We're going to make sure he's unhirable, unemployable, and fully prosecuted." He turned the screen to face himself and typed rapidly. "I'm emailing the Oregon Financial Crimes Task Force and copying in the DA. We're attaching the email logs, the scanned files, and your statement. I'll also push for a court order to freeze any property Brandon currently controls, Scottsdale included." I didn't say much after that. My voice wasn't needed. The evidence would speak louder than I ever could. That night, Brandon tried again. Another call. Another weak plea. "LYD, I know you're angry. But you don't understand what I was going through. Vanessa made it seem like it was the only way. Stop, I said coldly. Just stop. He tried again. Please. I made a mistake. No. You made a plan. And I saw every step of it. He paused. You're going to destroy me. I nodded slowly. Exactly. I hung up. From that point forward, it was all motion. Elliot filed paperwork at lightning speed. Monica helped me gather more physical evidence. I even managed to retrieve the remaining sample of Brandon's tea from a mug he left on the kitchen counter weeks ago. Monica tested it herself. Trace amounts of diphenhydramine and zolpidem. Both sleep-inducing agents. Both dangerous in prolonged use. We had the lab results certified and added them to the police report. Within 4 days, Brandon was formally served with a restraining order and criminal complaint for identity theft, fraud, and unauthorized access to a personal device. He tried to call. Tried to email. Then sent one final text. I was desperate. You know I didn't mean to hurt you. Please don't take this all the way. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because silence was the sharpest blade I had left. And it cut deeper than he ever expected. A week later, I met with a detective assigned to the case. Her name was Detective Morales, sharp, assertive, and fully dialed into financial abuse and digital crimes. She assured me Brandon was under active investigation and that a formal indictment could come within weeks. His online footprint is a mess, she said, flipping through her tablet. Multiple login attempts from your devices, time-stamped IP matches, forged document submissions, unauthorized financial movement. It's not just shady, it's criminal. I asked her something I hadn't asked anyone else yet. Something that haunted me. What if I hadn't caught him in time? Morales looked up. Then by the end of this month, you probably would have woken up in an empty apartment with your name on a $75,000 loan, and no legal recourse to undo it. Everything you had, gone. My body went cold. But she smiled then, just slightly. That's not what happened. You stopped it. And now, he's the one who's losing everything. I left that meeting changed. Not as a victim. Not even as a survivor. But as a woman who had ripped off the mask of a liar, stared into the eyes of betrayal, and refused to be erased. I walked down the courthouse steps that afternoon with my chin high, and the weight of fear gone from my spine. The storm had passed. But the reckoning? It had only just begun. The days that followed were strange. Not quiet, but eerily calm. The way the air feels after a massive storm has torn through a town, leaving broken pieces behind, but also clarity. I wasn't the same Lydia who once smiled while sipping poisoned tea in a dimly lit apartment. I was becoming someone else, someone I hadn't seen in years. Someone who remembered what it felt like to fight back. Brandon's name no longer lived in my mouth with fear. Now, it sparked something colder. Resolve. Elliot continued coordinating with the police, gathering more evidence to strengthen the fraud case. In the meantime, we filed an emergency motion to gain full legal protection over all assets under my name, including the apartment Brandon had tried to list as collateral in the Scottsdale investment scam. Monica, bless her heart, stayed by my side like a sentinel. Her apartment became my temporary home base. Her little gray cat, Winston, took to sleeping near my feet every night, like he knew I needed something steady, something warm. But the pain still lingered. It crept up during the quiet moments, like when I walked past a couple laughing at a coffee shop window, or saw an old photo on my phone of Brandon and me at the beach last summer. I stared at that picture for a long time one night. He had his arm around me. We looked like any happy couple. And yet, even then, he must have already been planning it. The identity theft. The chemical manipulation. The woman. Vanessa Cruz. Her name echoed in my head like a bell. I hadn't seen her face yet. Only fragments, her emails, the forwarded apartment listing in Scottsdale, the cropped ID photo attached to the forged documents. She felt like a ghost, except this ghost had teeth. Elliot, to his credit, found her within days. She's currently listed as a consultant for a boutique investment firm in Arizona, he told me during one of our regular meetings. But she travels often: LA, Houston, Miami. She knows how to hide money and move through loopholes. And she's real, I said, trying to keep my voice even. He nodded grimly. Oh, she's very real. And I'm adding her name to the criminal complaint as a co-conspirator. It felt strange seeing her not as this shadowy presence in emails, but as an actual person. A woman who knew I existed and still didn't care. A woman who had told my husband to handle me like I was a business obstacle. One email hit me harder than the others. She's too soft, Brandon. You keep babying her. Just finish the plan. No more delays. She's already sleepwalking through life. Soft. That one word burned in my stomach like acid. They thought I was weak. Sleepy. Distracted. A placeholder. But they were wrong. By the end of that week, I had filed for divorce. Served through the proper channels, notarized, with full documentation of all Brandon's illegal activities. Elliot said the sheer weight of evidence we had would all but guarantee an expedited ruling. And then, something unexpected happened. Brandon showed up at Monica's pharmacy. He didn't come inside. Just stood across the parking lot, under a maple tree, staring toward the entrance. I didn't even see him myself, Monica did, through the window while she was on shift. She texted me one word, him. I rushed over 30 minutes later, but he was gone. I asked Elliot if we could file for a restraining order violation. Not yet, he said. Technically, he hasn't breached distance. But if he tries to contact you again, verbally, digitally, or physically, document it immediately. He's circling. That means he's getting desperate. I began checking my email more frequently, scanning my spam folders. Nothing yet. Until one morning, an unknown email address popped up in my inbox, new chapter 72@protonmail.com. Subject line, one last chance? I opened it. Lydia. I made mistakes. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. But I never wanted to lose you. Vanessa meant nothing. I was scared. She pressured me. Can we talk? Please. Just once. Face to face. No lawyers. No blame. Just us. I still love you. B. I stared at it for a long time. And then I did something I never thought I would. I forwarded it straight to Elliot. This is gold, he replied within the hour. He's just confessed to the affair and to Vanessa's involvement in the scheme. More importantly, he acknowledges the plan. We're submitting this to the DA today. Brandon had unknowingly handed us a confession. 2 days later, I was called into the police department to review official testimony before they issued arrest warrants for both Brandon and Vanessa. Detective Morales was already waiting for me when I arrived. She offered a small smile. We just need you to confirm one more thing. In the affidavit, you said he tried to log into your bank account on the night of August 21st? Yes, I replied. From my laptop. I watched him. She tapped her pen. We cross-checked the IP address from your router logs with the failed login attempt registered on your bank's server. It's a direct match. That gives us digital trail confirmation, and that's the final piece we needed. I almost collapsed in relief. It was done. They would be arrested. I walked out of the precinct into the open air, letting the early evening sun touch my face. For the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed deep, without fear clawing at my lungs. Monica and I spent that night drinking wine and ordering greasy takeout. We didn't talk about the case much. Instead, we laughed, really laughed. About the time we got drunk on boxed wine in college and dyed our hair red. About the guy she dated who wore Crocs with socks. About anything and everything that had nothing to do with Brandon Stone. That night, I slept without fear. Without nightmares. Without the metallic taste of betrayal on my tongue. I was free. But what happened the next morning? That was something I never saw coming. I woke to a news alert. Local real estate broker arrested for fraud, identity theft, second suspect at large. I clicked the article. Brandon's mugshot stared back at me. Jaw tight. Eyes hollow. Shirt wrinkled. And right beneath the headline, a line that made my blood run cold. Vanessa Cruz remains unaccounted for. Authorities believe she may have fled the state. I stared at my phone, blinking at the screen as if it might change. Vanessa Cruz remains unaccounted for. Authorities believe she may have fled the state. The words throbbed like a migraine behind my eyes. Brandon being arrested had brought a sharp sense of closure, a victory I desperately needed. But knowing she had slipped away? That was different. That wasn't closure. That was unfinished business. Monica walked into the kitchen where I sat frozen, clutching my phone like it might crack. "Tell me that's not what I think it is," she said softly. I turned the screen toward her. Her lips curled in disgust. "Coward." I nodded slowly. She ran. She left him to take the fall. But that didn't quite feel right, did it? Vanessa Cruz didn't seem like the type to vanish in fear. Not the woman who had written, "Just finish the plan." She's already sleepwalking. No, this wasn't fear. This was a retreat in disguise. A calculated exit. She knew exactly how to disappear. And it scared me more than I cared to admit. Elliot called me less than an hour later. "Yes, it's true," he confirmed. Brandon was arrested late last night. The DA expedited it given the digital evidence, the financial trail, and the email you forwarded. "But she's gone," I said quietly. "We believe she crossed state lines the night before the arrest. Arizona's DMV shows no updated registration under her name. There's a possibility she used an alias. Vanessa has done consulting work under multiple LLCs before. We're working with federal authorities now. It's not over. But it feels like she's still out there. Watching." "Let her watch," Elliot said. "Because every day that passes, she becomes more traceable. And now that Brandon's talking." My breath caught. "He's what?" "He's already started cooperating." That hit me harder than expected. Brandon. The man who spent months drugging me. Who copied my entire digital life like it was a folder he planned to delete. The man who wanted to vanish with another woman while I was sedated in bed. That Brandon was now cooperating? "What's he saying?" I asked slowly. "He's trying to shift most of the responsibility onto Vanessa. Claims she manipulated him. Pushed him. Says he was in too deep. A classic deflection strategy. But the paper trail still points to his laptop, his IP address, and your stolen credentials." I wanted to laugh. The cowardice. The convenience of guilt when the consequences come knocking. "Do we have anything useful?" I asked. "Yes," Elliot said. He gave us 2 names. Alias profiles Vanessa has used in the past. One in California. One in New Mexico. Both tied to shell companies. We're following the lead. I hung up with a mix of emotions, satisfaction, nausea, a gnawing sense that this wasn't quite finished. Not yet. Over the next week, I started rebuilding. I filed the final divorce papers. Legally, financially, emotionally, I severed every last tie. I sold the apartment. That place wasn't home anymore. It was a crime scene with matching curtains. Every corner had a ghost. Every room held echoes of "you should have seen this sooner." I needed a fresh start. Something with clean air and quiet mornings. I found a small craftsman-style house near Lake Oswego. Just far enough from the city that I could breathe, but close enough that I didn't feel isolated. It had creaky floors, a wild backyard, and a kitchen flooded with sunlight. I didn't bring much with me. Just clothes, some journals, a few paintings I'd forgotten I owned. And Winston. He followed me like a little shadow, curling beside me every night like he'd appointed himself my guardian. Monica helped me settle in, and I repaid her by insisting she take a week off and let me book her a vacation to Mexico. She refused 3 times before finally laughing, "Only if you come with me next time." The quiet days were healing. I began painting again, at first, just to feel something. But the more I painted, the more I remembered the Lydia I used to be. Not the one who'd been betrayed, but the one who'd fought. I painted red skies, broken windows, bruised flowers. I painted a woman curled under storm clouds. I painted the moment sunlight touched her face again. And then, the call came. It was Detective Morales. "We got her." Those 3 words made my knees give out. I sank to the floor, heart racing. She was arrested this morning at a private rental in Sedona. Booked under an alias Emma Vallon. We matched her fingerprints to her previous arrests for tax evasion in 2013 and fraud in 2016. The feds were already watching her. She had a burner phone and $20,000 in cash. I didn't speak. I couldn't. "She's in custody, Lydia. And we're filing charges this week." I whispered, "Thank you." But it wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. Not for what she did to me. Still, justice had found her. The trial came months later. I didn't need to testify, our evidence spoke for itself. But I chose to attend the sentencing anyway. Brandon was led in first. He looked diminished. Pale, thin, dressed in a suit 2 sizes too big. He didn't glance my way. Vanessa followed, handcuffed and calm. Like none of this fazed her. But I saw something behind her eyes. Recognition. And then, just the faintest twitch of her lips. A smile. I stared at her, unmoving. Letting her look at me. Letting her see I was still here. The judge read the sentence. Brandon would serve a minimum of 3 years for identity theft and wire fraud. Vanessa got 5 for conspiracy and financial crime with intent to flee. When the gavel fell, something inside me exhaled. It was over. The exit wasn't loud. No fireworks. No dramatic speeches. Just me walking out of that courtroom and into the daylight. And in that sunlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. They say the body remembers trauma long after the mind forgets. And it's true. Even after the arrests, the trials, the sentencing, even after the courtroom doors shut behind me for good, my hands still trembled when I picked up a mug of tea. The first few weeks back in my new house were like learning how to live again. I didn't trust silence. I didn't trust kindness. I didn't even trust myself fully, not yet. But slowly, moment by moment, I rebuilt. I painted every room in soft, warm tones. I cooked for myself again, not to impress anyone, not for performance, just to eat what made me feel good. Monica came over on weekends, sometimes just to sit in the sun-drenched kitchen and read while I painted. We didn't always talk about what had happened. But when we did, it was without fear. It was like turning over a stone and knowing no snake would strike. One Saturday morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, written in all caps with a black pen. I stared at it for several minutes before opening it. Inside was a single photograph. Me, taken from across the street, walking into the courthouse the day of Brandon and Vanessa's sentencing. And on the back, 2 words. Still watching. My blood froze. I immediately called Detective Morales. "This doesn't look like Brandon's doing," she said after examining the photo. "He's locked down. And Vanessa's still in Arizona state custody, awaiting transfer. But they had contacts. It's possible someone's trying to rattle you." It worked. For 2 nights, I couldn't sleep. I moved a chair in front of the front door. I kept the porch lights on. I installed a new security camera system with floodlights and alerts. But by the 3rd morning, I looked at the photo again, and I got mad. Not scared. Not anxious. Angry. Whoever sent that wanted to remind me I had been prey once. But they didn't understand, I wasn't the same woman anymore. I'd already survived the worst. I'd already buried the nightmare. And I would not live in the shadow of it again. I mailed the photo to Elliot, who forwarded it to a private security firm. Within days, they confirmed it was likely taken by a local hired hand, someone Brandon used once for property surveillance during shady flips. That man had already been arrested months ago for unrelated fraud. In other words, a desperate parting shot from a crumbling past. I made a choice right then, no more looking over my shoulder. Instead, I would look forward. By spring, I'd started working again, freelance, part-time, reviewing investment portfolios for smaller firms that appreciated discretion and clarity. My name still carried weight in the industry. People remembered my skill. Not the scandal. That part stayed buried in sealed court records and quietly handled settlements. But one thing had changed, I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. One Friday afternoon, I got a call from a man named Aaron Klein, a senior partner at a financial consultancy group in Seattle. He'd heard about my work through an old colleague. "We're building a division focused on financial abuse prevention," he said. "Women, seniors, vulnerable clients. We want someone who understands both numbers and the human side." Your name came up. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the window. Looked at the wind moving through the trees. At Winston curled in a patch of sunlight. At my own reflection in the glass, tired, yes. But steady. Whole. "Send me the proposal," I said. That job turned into something more than work. It became a mission. And a few months later, when I was invited to speak on a financial justice panel in front of state legislators, I accepted. Public speaking had never been my thing. But standing at that podium, looking out at a room full of strangers who needed to hear what I'd lived through, I found my voice. I was drugged every night by a man I trusted, I told them. And when I finally saw the truth, I realized the crime wasn't just what he took from my bank account, it was what he tried to take from my identity, my autonomy, and my future. There were gasps. Nods. And, by the end, a standing ovation. After the panel, a woman in her 60s approached me in tears. She'd been conned out of her retirement by her own son-in-law. She hugged me like I had given her permission to breathe again. That was the moment I knew, I had turned my story into something more than pain. I had turned it into power. The final closure came one gray September afternoon. A letter arrived from the state prison board. Brandon had applied for early release after completing a required rehabilitation program. His petition was denied. I folded the letter and placed it in a box labeled "Case Closed." No celebration. No champagne. Just quiet relief. A week later, I visited the coast. I walked alone on Cannon Beach, shoes off, wind in my hair. I let the ocean pull at my ankles. I watched the waves carry off everything I had once been afraid to face. And then I sat on a driftwood log, opened my sketchbook, and began to draw. Not the past. Not the pain. But a woman standing in front of an open window, hair blown back, tea untouched on the table behind her. Eyes wide open. It's strange how healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with sirens or grand declarations. It comes quietly, like breath returning after you've held it for too long. The day I realized I wasn't afraid anymore, I was in a bookstore. I had gone in to escape the rain, half looking for something to read during a slow weekend. But while browsing, I saw a title that stopped me cold. Surviving Betrayal, Reclaiming Yourself After Financial Abuse. It wasn't the title, exactly. It was the woman on the cover. She was standing alone on a rocky shore, hair windblown, eyes toward the sky. I saw myself. Not the broken version. Not the betrayed one. The version who'd come out the other side. I bought the book, not because I needed it, but because it felt like a keepsake, a reminder of the path I'd walked. Later that evening, I sat on my front porch, the sun dipping low behind the pines. I had a mug in my hand. Real tea. One I made for myself. Mint and lemon. Nothing hidden, no chemicals, no shadows. Winston curled by my feet, purring softly. The world felt still, but in a good way. And that's when I allowed myself to ask a question I had avoided for months. What if none of it had happened? What if Brandon had never betrayed me? Would I still be married? Still commuting through rain and fog, still trying to shrink myself into someone else's version of enough? Would I have ever started painting again? Would I be leading a new program to help others escape financial manipulation? The answer didn't come all at once. But I realized something as I sat in the fading light. I didn't want to go back. Not to that version of me. Not to that apartment. Not to that smile I wore like armor every night I drank his tea. Because what I had now was mine. My house. My peace. My purpose. And my story. A story I decided to share, publicly, 1 year after Brandon's sentencing. I wrote an op-ed for a national magazine on financial coercion and emotional betrayal. I didn't use his name. But I told the truth. Every word of it. The response was overwhelming. Emails. Messages. Even phone calls to my office. Women. Men. Survivors. Advocates. So many of them had never told anyone what they'd gone through. Until they read my story. That article became the foundation for something more. A non-profit. Clarity House. A support network for survivors of financial abuse, offering legal resources, counseling, and education. It started with 6 people in a shared office space near downtown Portland. Today, it has over 100 volunteers and 3 branches across the state. Sometimes, I still get asked if I'm angry. If I ever think about Brandon. About Vanessa. About the time I lost. And the answer is yes. But not the way you'd think. I'm not angry because of what they did. I'm grateful for what I survived. Because from it, I found something they never expected. Freedom. In one of my final court filings, I had to write a victim impact statement. I rewrote it 4 times. Cried through it. Stared at blank pages, unsure of what to say. But eventually, I wrote this. You tried to take everything from me, my identity, my stability, even my sleep. But you made one mistake. You underestimated my ability to wake up. I don't think he ever read it. But it wasn't for him. It was for me. And for anyone else who needed to hear it. Today, my life isn't perfect. But it's honest. I still have nightmares sometimes. But I also have mornings where I wake up smiling for no reason. I still feel a flicker of tension when someone offers to make me tea. But now I trust myself to say no, or make my own. And I don't hide from mirrors anymore. I face them. Every day. Because I'm still here. And no one will ever silence that again. Lydia's story reminds us that betrayal doesn't always come with warning signs, and that sometimes, the person you share a bed with can become your greatest threat. But it also proves something even more important, that survival is not just about getting through pain, it's about rising above it. If you or someone you know has experienced coercion, manipulation, or financial abuse, you are not alone. Speak up. Get help. Reclaim your voice. And never forget, freedom isn't found in forgiveness. It's found in choosing yourself. This has been another powerful true story from Revenge Echoes, where the truth always finds its voice. If Lydia's journey moved you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more emotional and shocking stories that expose betrayal and celebrate redemption.